Welcome to the Master B2B Fireside Chat series. My name is Brian Beck. I'm the co-founder of Master B2B. We're a thought leadership community of e-commerce executives across all different kinds of B2B industries. I'm excited today. We've got a great topic. We're talking about demystifying the IT side of the digital and customer experience. We got some great guests. My co-host today is Josh Kinzer, Global VP of Commerce at Sitecore. Josh has been in the industry for quite a long time, 20 plus years at Oracle, IBM, Salesforce, a number of other companies. Tell us a little bit about what Sitecore does. Josh, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to be here with Peter as well. Sitecore is a leading digital experience platform provider for hundreds of brands globally, the brands that we would all recognize, trusting the most visionary digital and content leaders to giving them the power to build and deliver a very personalized digital experience. I specialize in a commerce piece of that experience.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have a great conversation. We have a very special guest, Peter Nowak, Brady Corporation Software Engineering Manager. Peter, you've been there for 4 years. You were at Pillar RX, Centaria earlier, almost 20 years of experience. Tell us a little bit about Brady Corp. What does Brady do?
Yeah, so I'm Software Engineering Manager here at Brady. I run 4 teams here, all dealing around these Sitecore e-commerce platforms. Each team specializes within their own little area or their own little feature. 3 feature teams and then 1 DevOps team that really owns the infrastructure and deployment.
Awesome. So our topic today is demystifying the IT side of the e-commerce experience and how to modernize it. This is such a great topic, guys, because there are, historically, there's just been sort of this, quote unquote tension between B2B marketing and e-commerce side of things, sort of the business side, and the IT side, right? And, the 2 teams working together and, who should own different things. And so, from a business perspective, and a lot of our community are folks who are, VPs of e-commerce and directors of e-commerce at business, and they have sort of a business aspect and a P&L, and they're driving the business requirements. But often, what happens is they don't understand necessarily the IT side of what's happening, and they need to, right? And these teams need to work together. And so we've had debates about this at Master B2B over the course of our existence, and it's going to be really exciting to see and hear that perspective from you, Peter, and you as well, Josh. So you described a little bit about your role. Tell us about Brady's e-commerce experience, kind of your evolution, and a little bit of the background of how you look at e-commerce as an organization.
Yeah, so e-commerce started here at Brady somewhere around 12, 14 years ago, where we really redid our websites to the Sitecore platform here. And it's certainly evolved over the years. We started off as being primarily really focused on just driving to that one customer. And we did that to try to take some, additional sales, direct sales directly from our customers as opposed to going through other channels. And probably more recently, we're starting to see a bigger focus around, that the business type buyer now coming to us and starting to build out that platform, trying to get more towards B2B as opposed to just including B2C type customers. So that's really where we're evolving going forward, is driving that customer experience for them.
And how have you worked with the business team in the past in terms of defining requirements, setting objectives? Kind of tell us a little bit about how that works, or how it's even evolved over the time you've been working with Brady.
Yeah. So we have the business side, and our product owner actually comes from the business on the marketing side. So we've got a fairly strong relationship with them over there. And it really starts with the business side taking a look, and we create what we call a lean canvas on the business side, where we basically just outline what that problem statement is, what are the benefits, what are the success metrics. We then take that lean canvas to a larger steering committee on the business side. We talk through what risks there might be, where we think their value comes from. From there, once it gets prioritized by the business, we start to break apart that work And we've got multiple teams that are sometimes involved with this, from, the development team, the product owner. We've got a UX team that actually sits on the business side, on the marketing side. And we really look at that work. We figure out what's our MVP, what can we get out quick, fast, and start to experiment on, because that's really the goal, is how do we get stuff to that customer even faster. We look at the MVP, then we really start breaking that work down even further to the point where the dev teams are really getting technical on some of that stuff. And then our goal, and it doesn't always happen, right? I mean, this is software. It's difficult. We're not making widgets. We are building, some software. So our goal is to try to get something out to that customer, every couple of weeks, ideally. And that doesn't always happen, but that's our end goal, is to do it that way.
I love how much you're saying the word customer, Peter. That's really awesome. Josh, and from your perspective, you've done so much of this work over your career. Tell us, about, from your perspective, and you obviously work with Peter and Brady, but across your, the companies you've worked with, what have you seen as some of the best practices? I mean, are you seeing, in terms of these collaboration between business and IT, and some of the things Peter was alluding to, steering committees and things? Is this what you see across your customer base?
It is, and it's such it's an exciting conversation to highlight. Thinking back, Peter, 2 years ago, as you considered, where you wanted to go and why you were looking to partner with Sitecore Commerce and the Order Cloud solution in particular, you drove some things that, the business process requirements for the B2B world was going to be much more specific, much more challenging, especially for the supplier management requirements you would have, some of the fulfillment requirements you would have that were quite more complex and different than the direct consumer or B2C type of use cases. The payment types that would be required, all of those, what was it, contract management requirements that were specific. It's much different than just a credit card payment. So there were some things that you were very thoughtful on, and just what you described there. It's a very agile software framework approach you're taking and you're practicing. You're not doing a crawl, walk, run in a project base of a big waterfall project. You're doing what's the MVP, show a value, get feedback, really show the business that, again, going back to your great topic, Brian, it's demystifying. It's not going into a black hole and saying, right, okay, in 6 months, we're going to come back with your solution, whether you like it or not. We're going to consider your business process and your sales process and some of those interactions that the B2B business really are considering. And they're basing that based on what the market feedback is. They're trying to compete and grow the business. So it's those best practices that I described is really what's inspiring about Brady's story and journey. I think that's why there'll be a thought leader across that B2B manufacturing digital commerce space for years to come.
Well, that's what's really, we're getting to this concept, or this notion of being nimble and agile, and the business typically is, really pushing for that, from what I've seen. And Peter, I don't know, as you were working through these requirements and your steering committees and things like that. I mean, has Brady historically had kind of this competition for, hey, on the IT side, we need to make sure things are stable and secure and functional and upgradable and all those things. At the same time, the business is saying, I need something that's really nimble and agile to meet my customers' needs. Did that exist historically, at that kind of tension in a sense, Peter?
Yes, it did. And that's really what drove us to re-looking at our platforms and our architecture.
Okay.
Right. We actually sat down with Sitecore probably about 2 years ago, and we did a marketing developer type committee, almost, vision session, where we sat down and we just started throwing ideas on Post-it notes and throwing it up on the wall and starting to categorize some of this stuff. Really drove where we wanted to go with our e-commerce platform. And we took a lot of that and kind of looked at our current platform and went, boy, I don't know if we can do this with our current platform. We gotta think of some other options. And we took a lot of those requirements and started, investigating different platforms out there that we could utilize. Mm-hmm. And that's really what settled us to going with, Sitecore Order Cloud, their e-commerce platform. Mm-hmm. We had a couple of, to your point, technical requirements that we were looking at. Mm-hmm. We don't want to spend time on doing upgrades on maintaining the platforms.
Right.
We want to deliver, features and functionality. That's our bread and butter. It's not our maintaining platforms and stuff like that. And going with Sitecore Order Cloud being a headless platform, being flexible enough, that's what drove some of that, right? And those were directly coming from a lot of those requirements from the business, and coming out of that vision session that we had 2 years ago almost.
So, Josh, do you see? I mean, again, you work across a lot of different companies. Do you see what are a couple of the best practices you see of, IT and business working together? In other ways. I mean, you said Brady's kind of setting the standard in a lot of ways here. What other examples do you see, Josh? Do you see any other things that could be useful for our listeners?
There's a long list of things that we could draw on. I think Peter highlighted a couple. I think conceptually, the nimble and the agile and quick time to value. What does that require? I think it requires, even if you're not considering a platform like Order Cloud, what it's requiring is that you need to quickly be able to coexist with legacy technology, but look at the business process that the business typically, there's a set amount of revenue that the business is expecting, and they're looking to grow it, and they're looking to automate things and improve their costs through some automation. So how is it that commerce services can really play into a business process, an existing business process, to either remove some friction, some manual processes, some extensive lack of self-service that the business in the field is just like fed up with, candidly. And then they're also asking, okay, we have actually some pretty decent systems. How do we just digitize these and add a little more AI, like some Q&A that's in the field, that's self-service? So these are conceptually these complementary composable services. And I think that's the piece of how do we quickly, that's a big part of the agile framework type of thing. So that's the demands of businesses. We have to compete. We don't have the chance to step back and do a 24-month project upgrade and RFP process and all these things. They need to deliver something incrementally to compete today, and deliver that to the board and deliver that to the market. So Peter and other leaders there are recognizing we're not in a silo. We're not in a ivory tower. We have to be partners truly with the business. And you hear it in the terms he's using. The best leaders are using those terms and close with their partners. And a lot of the times it is around that business process engineering and fitting into what the business processes are requiring.
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, one of those words, Josh, is customer, right? I hear Peter saying that a lot, which is
right.
You wouldn't necessarily have heard that, 15, 20 years ago from an IT, side,
Nope.
right? Right. So it's really encouraging, Peter, and it's great. It's great. I love hearing that. You raised an interesting point, Josh. You talking about legacy systems, and we have this notion of technical debt, right? And and business users, we don't necessarily, I come from the business side. I was a VP of eCom. Don't think about the things that IT has to deal with in many ways, and technical debt and legacy systems and things like that aren't necessarily top of mind for a business leader trying to make a decision about where to go with the business, establishing vision, etc. Peter, what are some of those things, and how, maybe enlighten some of our business listeners and what the, and what some of those things are you have to deal with when you think about, these kind of lofty goals and visions that the business has to grow sales and things.
Yeah, technical debt is definitely a huge one, right? I mean, just like we've all gone out, and most of us have gone out and gotten ourselves a mortgage for a house. At one point, we have to pay it back. That's the same with technical debt, right? At some point, you're going to have to pay it back. Otherwise, your systems are going to get compromised. And we certainly hit a lot of technical debt, throughout our life cycle and our projects and everything else. And it becomes a little bit of a balancing act on how do we start to pay that back. And we've got some mechanisms in place to do that. But on top of technical debt, there's certainly security concerns that we have to be accounted for. We got to make sure that we're on top of that. Brady is unique, I would say, that we do own everything. In a lot of organizations, the development team hands it off to some other team, and they're doing the deployments and they're doing the security. That all falls on my teams here at Brady. So every team is responsible for security. I've got a separate team for DevOps that really owns it. But at the end of the day, all four teams are responsible for security. They're responsible for platform upgrades, which is another big thing, right? Other priorities that we got to take into account. And yeah, we're trying to get to more of a microservice, headless type architecture, but at the end of the day, we still have some platform stuff that we need to maintain and upgrade. And, you know, if we let any of those stuff slide, you start to run into security risk, security holes. So it's a never-ending cycle here that you have to stay on top of. And we manage that with the business, you know, by simply going, hey, here's priorities, here's your priorities, here's our priorities. How do we intertwine those? We kind of have an unwritten rule of, you know, 20% of our time is going to be spent on tech debt, security, that kind of stuff to make sure that we pay back that tech debt. Because otherwise the bank's going to call us and we're going to have to owe them and we're going to have to foreclose, right? None of us want to get
analogy.
there. So
That's great. Yeah. And Josh, are you seeing the same thing across your customer base? I mean, you know, in terms of, you know, things like this and, you know, any best practices you can suggest to, you know, either the IT team or the business team in terms of understanding what the other side's dealing with, you know, technical debt and the other things Peter mentioned?
Yeah, Peter said it so well. I think what I would add is that, as you look forward, you want to be able to think about what within a long-term strategy of deprecating that tech debt. You're paying it down, but you're also replacing it with solutions that scale and take some of the elements in the world of SaaS and the world that we're moving into and away from an on-premise solution, especially for commerce solutions. Some you know, mission critical systems will always be on-premise, and that there's no way away from that. But for some systems, you want to move those workloads. So the best practice is to move the workloads of security, of truly composable commerce at the platform level. So Order Cloud, for instance, is made up of 80 plus services, but they're all composable services, part of the platform. The experience that Brady extends into each of those business use cases that the business is looking for. They want to reimagine how digital commerce is going to extend into these B2B use cases. And we've been talking about omni-channel and all these types of things for 15, 20 years, right, Brian? And in practice, it's difficult and it's messy to do in a complex mobile distributed manufacturing company and then B2B companies. So that said, we're much closer to that reality, and we're doing it today. And the best practice is to think about what platforms am I investing in that are composable, that can coexist, that can take on micro workloads now, and then as over time, as we're paying that debt down, we can actually move those workloads off rigid legacy systems that are expensive and heavy to maintain and have to be upgraded onto a modern SaaS-based secure platform that won't be we won't be upgrading and paying more debt, building more tech debt, but we can be building very personalized experiences on top of those solutions.
So we're saying it now, Josh. Technical debt is dead, right? Maybe, or maybe there is a vision where it can be. That's great. No, that's great.
It hopefully becomes minimized as we start to move to those composable type architectures. You can isolate your tech debt a lot better that way. So,
and this is great, guys. This is a great discussion. And Peter, I mean, is that part of how you convince the business to understand that you're dealing with reality and you're trying to learn from the past and try to eliminate, tech debt going forward, and how that'll help them with being more nimble?
You caught me off guard there a little bit.
No worries.
Yeah, I guess you could say a little bit. The business is always wanting to move faster. That's always the case, right? We want to get more stuff to our customers sooner, and we're still trying to balance that quite a bit. We still have a rather large legacy system that we're slowly migrating over to headless, to composable, all of that stuff. And it's certainly been a slow-going process in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But in the same regard, we just work with the business. We explain to them where the challenges are. We try to minimize our risk as much as we can. We went live with Order Cloud here the past year, and we did that in such a fashion that it really did not impact business one bit. And it took a while, and there was a lot of technical debt that slowed us down because of it. But we worked with the business. We explained this to them. We walked through it. We talked about what the benefits of going down these different avenues are and what we're going to see at the long run. And we're starting to slowly see some of those benefits today as we start to build new functionality and new features into the system. We're able to move faster now because we've eliminated some of that technical debt.
And
Can
Peter,
I add to that comment?
Yeah, please.
Can I add to that comment, Brian? So Peter, one thing that I've heard from some of your other leaders as well is this concept of optionality. So I think your business is pragmatic. Brian, I'd love to actually, since you were a former VP of eCommerce, we'd love to hear from you on this as well. But this concept of optionality, as Brady has talked about, Brady has always been a visionary. The first time I met their team, I was really impressed that they had adopted some AI-driven search, for instance, really trying to deliver a personalized search experience into their digital platforms, doing things that they're considering the future in AI. I don't think any of us knew the role AI would be playing today 5 years ago. And we don't know how it's going to be playing a role even 12 months from now, but we know that it's going to be part of our landscape and changing things. So I think if the solution that the businesses are considering have the right framework so that they can be consumed by AI, that's a given. I mean, if you don't have that, if you're going to create a new black box for only proprietary AI, then you're creating tech debt because we don't know what the broader AI is going to want to consume your data sources. So these are some concepts that are they're providing the business with optionality. And if you can articulate that to the business from an IT standpoint, it builds your confidence and credibility because they know that you don't know. They know we all don't know what the answer is, but we have to be prepared for what the options are going to be in the future.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. And in my experience was, as a VP of e-commerce working with the IT team, was exactly that. We wanted that flexibility. We wanted that at the time. I haven't been a VP of e-com for probably 7 years now, 8 years ago, and there weren't as many platform options at the time, and a lot of it was very restricted in terms of your ability to be flexible. Some platforms were more flexible than others, but we don't have the same kind of options even in sort of the platform approach that folks like Peter and Brady have today, which is really exciting. I would have loved to have these types of options back then. So, one of the questions we often see is, where do things start and stop in organizations? From business to IT. How at Brady, how does that kind of ownership divide up?
Yeah, so the marketing team really owns the vision, owns the roadmap of the product. We've got a product owner, so it's a single point, that individual that owns that. Also on the business side, we've got all of our stakeholders, and that could be, other marketeers. It could be the sales team. It could be, internal customer service, customer support. All of them is really our stakeholders. From there, we've got the delivery team, and the delivery team primarily makes up of my development team, my four, but then there's also, that kind of hangs off on the side. UX team is sitting in there as well. Now, the UX team is actually on the marketing side as well.
Okay.
We've got a software architect that also helps us with some of this stuff. Just helps drive, where should we go? How does this work? Making sure the teams are going in the right direction from an architectural standpoint. And then also kind of off on the side as well, we've got the SEO team that really, is another one of our customers for sure. We do a lot of work for that SEO team, but then they're the ones that are also driving a lot of that traffic to that site.
Awesome. And Josh, are you seeing that in terms of best practices here? And Peter alluded earlier to a steering committee and other ways they kind of divide up. What are some of the things you're seeing in the industry around how sort of things are divided up?
So the way that Peter described their approach is really aligned with pretty pragmatic best practices. It's this content supply chain. And it's really driven. It should be driven and owned by those that have put into place governance and also the vision for our digital brand and the content we want to be in the field. And the goal that Peter's leadership and Peter have shared is they want to increase the velocity of approved content and personalizing that content and making it really relevant. It's a big part of their ability to compete digitally and to extend their brand So how do they do that? I mean, I think that a lot of the things they're describing allow the practitioners to do what they do and own what they own in their tooling and in their business process. So I think what that requires is some downstream good communication, and he's articulating some. So there's a framework, and that framework is going to be based on whatever each business. But there's a framework to follow, and then there's some integrations. And I think one thing that we want to avoid is asking marketing practitioners to suddenly learn a new system and learn a commerce system and learn some IT things. They get frustrated. They want to be creative, and they want to really drive the content and live where the consumers are and live as a competitor there. So I think some best practices there are make the once the content strategy is defined, or once the content is created, integrate that automatically into your downstream systems that need to consume it, and put it in the hands of your practitioners that on the IT side that can really just quickly deploy that across all the channels that you have prepared to go and deploy.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have developed a system here, which, Peter, based on what you're saying, really gives that business user some capability to make changes and do things, and really gives you the flexibility to kind of future-proof the business. Tell us about the results. So you've obviously been talking a lot about the implementation and the things you've done. What kind of results have you seen?
Yeah, so we really only measure the revenue on a year-to-year basis, and we look at it even from a monthly basis. But over the past couple of years since I've been here, we've certainly increased revenue, especially to the U.S. site, almost 15 to 20% year over year. So, we're doing something right. That's for sure. And I think, a lot of that is giving the business the ability to drive the content, like Josh kind of mentioned earlier.
Right.
It's being able to be flexible, being able to deliver in a timely manner, and what the customer needs.
Gotcha. So, and then Josh, from your perspective, when you think about the kinds of metrics companies are seeing now when they put a more sort of flexible system in place, number one, from an ROI standpoint, when they're making the original business case, and then what are they seeing on the other side of it in terms of benefit to the business? Peter was talking about revenue. That's certainly one metric. What other kinds of things are you seeing?
So, I'm actually part of a panel at a B2B conference next week, and I think the B2B market in general is asking for metrics that are very similar to direct consumer. The average value of a customer, the lifecycle value of a customer, and taking the themes around personalization, the themes around as they provide self-service, the value of a customer and the cost of acquiring that and retaining that customer to go down. The overall, those types of metrics are what the B2B market is asking for and expecting. And they want the executives want the ability to be able to view that data more frequently than annually. They want to be able to see that on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis in real time. So that's where I think partnerships for Sitecore with companies like Microsoft that are extending into allowing you to have more of that analytics data on your customers and respond well and get more granular is key. So I think those are some things to consider around how do we get access to the order history and all the different components of a customer and incorporate that into a personalization theme around that B2B customer, the same way we would around a retail customer or a lifetime, like a typical customer relationship management, 360-degree view of a customer. So extending those types of themes and KPIs to the B2B world. So it again starts with, can you capture the customer order data? Can you capture their preference? Can you deliver in the channels that they want? Can you provide self-service? These are the basics, and then you start to measure them.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Peter, from again, talking to some of our business listeners here, thinking about some other KPIs and things you're held accountable to, which would be, I would imagine, things like security, like stability, system uptime. I mean, what are some of the other KPIs that you have a chance to talk to the business users here? Tell them what what you're dealing with and what's your goal too.
Yeah, we certainly look at, some of those metrics as well. Uptime is a big one for us.
Yeah,
We monitor that one quite frequently. And we're constantly looking at that one. So that is one that I report out on a monthly basis to the business. The other ones, we take a look at Google Core Vitals quite heavily.
Okay.
But, going back once again to what's that customer experience? Are we improving on those? What can we do to improve upon those? And then page speed, performance, that kind of stuff is of course, still important to us. We still look at all of that stuff. But like I said, at the end of the day, that all drives revenue. So that's our kind of end all metric that we kind of really hang our hat on is are we increasing that revenue? Those are all helping out. Does that revenue get there? We do look at other security type metrics as well. We've got different tools in place to kind of monitor that and, make sure that we're improving on those. A lot of those are used internally within the dev teams at that point. They're sometimes still a little too technical. The business, while they might find it interesting, I'm not sure they fully understand or where we're going. So if we have something major that comes up, we might talk about it and go, yeah, we've increased, our security score. We're getting better at it. But those are really internal IT metrics that we really look at. And we don't really talk through those very much with the business unless there's a need at that point.
I'm hearing a lot of communication, which is great, and it seems like that's a key to your success here. So Peter, as we look at going forward, so the beacon on world-class experience is always moving out, and how do you think about as we look towards the future, making sure your tech stack is really ready for where things are going and maintains that flexibility you've built?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the composable architecture that we've kind of always talked about. We were trying to achieve that best in class, and we're always going to be experimenting. We're always going to be trying new things. And that architecture really helps us. That gives us that flexibility to kind of strive for that best in class in a lot of those areas.
Gotcha.
So I have a question in that regard.
Yeah,
I have a question for Peter in that regard. So the catalog, as the business is considering, this is how much we can make today because this is what we have to sell today. And these are the channels we have to sell. So what things do you see as a future growth metric and method for you in growing your catalog? Any thoughts on extending it to include maybe third-party products and services to complement the Brady catalog that you're not offering today or anything along those lines?
Historically, we haven't done a lot of third-party sales on our website. The only one that I can think of is Brady Corporation with handheld scanners. And a few years ago, we actually acquired them as, just outright. So that's really the only one that I can think of from
so
like
it must
a
have been a good
third-party
partnership then.
Yes. And they missed it. They had a need that we were looking to fulfill.
Right.
But that's really the only one that I can think of. I'm not saying that there's not more that I don't know about. I mean, if you look at our catalog, it's quite extensive, and there's a vast, wide range of products that are out there. I think if we continue to think about the future, I think what we could do potentially is start to bring in other brands that we own. Brady is large. We've got Seton out there, another brand that Brady owns that we sell and do e-commerce with. We've got PDC. We've got a whole bunch of different brands. So if I was going to look, way out in the future, it would probably be that one buying experience for all of those brands. That's way out there. Those are, pipe dreams at this point.
Right.
But that's where I see, if we're going to expand and add different catalogs, that's probably where I would see us going before we'd start offering third party into, just the pure Brady ID platform that we currently have.
And that's a great description, candidly, on a best practice, Brian. Can you invest in a solution platform that takes care of your security and all of your scale, and also allows for you to take on these other B2B channels and catalogs and catalog complexity and pricing schedules and all those types of things in concert with the same platform providing the simple, direct, pretty simple use cases.
For sure. Yeah, no doubt. And Peter, so one last question, because we're coming up on time here, but one last question for you. It really, you've had a successful collaboration here, and what's one thing that your business partners have done well that have helped you to achieve success? What are they doing that helped you get there?
Yeah, I would say, just being open and transparent with us, just as we are with them being open and transparent.
Okay.
And I think that drives, a lot of times with IT in the business, we lose the what and the why, what we're trying to accomplish and why. And I think one thing that the business does really well is explain that, which helps get buy-in then from my dev teams, right? Like they understand the purpose, what they're trying to build. So I think that is one thing that I would say has certainly driven success is, making sure that we understand that, the what and the why, because then we're all marching towards that same goal and that same outcome.
Yep. Communication. Yep. I love it.
Yep.
Well, Josh, you have been a great co-host here. Josh Kinzer from Sitecore, and then Peter Nowak, Brady. You've been fantastic. Provided really both of you provide some really great insights. We appreciate your I appreciate both your times, and Peter in particular. With your we know you've got a lot going on, so we appreciate you breaking out some time for us. And we look forward to following your continued progress and collaboration together, and watching what else you guys can do to set the standard for our industry. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity as well.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Peter. Great job. Great topic. Really, really fun to contribute.
Awesome. We'll see everybody next time on our next Fireside Chat.